Hey friends, I'm Parrihoff, and welcome to the Parrihoff Collective, where therapy, wellness, and creativity come together to help you write your own story. Hey friends, and welcome back to Therapy Thursday with Parrihoff, helping you write your own story. Today, we're wrapping up these last couple of months of conversations that have taken us through mental health, therapy, emotional wellness, boundaries, accountability, and healing. We've talked about what mental health really looks like. We've talked about functioning but not being okay. We've talked about therapy. We've talked about ministry not being a coping skill. And we've talked about boundaries. We've talked about taking responsibility for our growth. We've talked about managing our emotional landscape. And after all of that, I think we're left with one important question. Now what? What do we do with everything we've learned? Awareness is important, but awareness was never the goal. Healing was. Today's conversation is called Healing is How the Story Continues. You don't have to become who hurt you. I think one of the biggest misconceptions about healing is that people think healing means forgetting. It doesn't. Healing doesn't mean pretending it didn't happen. Healing doesn't mean minimizing your pain. Healing doesn't mean acting like everything was okay when it wasn't. Healing means the thing that happened to you no longer gets to control what happens next. That's different. Many of us can clearly identify who hurt us. We can identify the betrayal, the rejection, the abandonment, the disappointment, the criticism, the abuse, the neglect, the heartbreak, and sometimes we become so focused on what happened that we never stop to ask, what is this pain turning me into? Because that's the real question. Not just what happened, but what am I becoming because of it? One of the greatest dangers of unhealed pain is that eventually we begin giving away what we've been carrying. Hurt people often hurt people, not because they're evil, not because they're malicious, but because pain that isn't processed often gets transferred. We become critical because someone was critical of us. We become distant because someone was distant with us. We become controlling because we felt powerless. We become guarded because we were hurt. And before we know it, we're creating the very things we hated experiencing. But here's the good news. You do not have to become who hurt you. You do not have to repeat the cycle. You do not have to pass your pain on to the next person. You don't have to make your wounds become someone else's burden. You can choose differently. And if you've been with me these last few weeks, you already know that choice is a recurring theme because healing requires participation. There is no amount of prayer that substitutes for a decision. There is no amount of therapy that substitutes for a decision. There is no amount of coaching that substitutes for a decision. There is no amount of reading, journaling, or self-awareness that substitutes for you making a decision. At some point, we have to decide, I want something different. Maybe that means setting boundaries. Maybe that means going to therapy. Maybe that means having the difficult conversation. Maybe that means apologizing. Maybe that means forgiving. Maybe that means letting go. Maybe that means starting over. Maybe that means finally choosing yourself. Whatever it is, healing usually requires movement. And here's something else I've learned. The goal isn't perfection. The goal isn't becoming someone who never struggles. The goal isn't becoming someone who never gets triggered. The goal isn't becoming someone who never makes mistakes. The goal is becoming healthier than you were yesterday. That's it. Progress over perfection. Growth over excuses. Healing over survival. Because surviving and healing are not the same thing. Many people survive. They get through the day, make it to work, they pay their bills, they take care of their responsibilities, but healing is something different. Healing is learning to live instead of simply endure. Healing is learning to experience peace instead of constantly managing chaos. Healing is learning that your story didn't end with your pain. I want you to remember something. Your story deserves compassion. Your story deserves understanding. Your story deserves acknowledgement. But your story was never meant to become your permanent address. You are allowed to keep growing. You are allowed to keep changing. You are allowed to become more than what happened to you. So, as we close out these last few weeks, I want to leave you with this. The goal was never just awareness. The goal was healing. The goal was never just understanding your wounds. The goal was learning how to move forward despite them. The goal was never just surviving. The goal was becoming whole, because healing is how the story continues. The next chapter is still being written. This has been Parrihoff with the Parrihoff Project, reminding you that you always have the power to write your own story. Ta for now.